Introduction. Is he real? He was young enough to still be riding in the back seat, not yet tall enough to be in the passenger seat up front next to me. We were alone in the car arguing about his new, older friends in the neighborhood, part of a tough transition to the town we had just moved to. He was embarrassed that his friends saw him leaving the house dressed up every Sunday morning for church, since their parents didn't make them go. That's when the questions first began for him. The questions kept coming and the answers too, although not as dramatic as what happened that day in the car. Years later, Jonathan would say what he experienced was a panic attack. He'd blurted out the most outrageous thing he could think of to the God of the universe in the presence of his mother, bearing witness, and his 8-year-old body had reacted to his act of rebellion. But he only told that version of the story after he returned from Africa. And everything changed when he returned from Africa. Things shifted. His story got rewritten. My son says our spiritual paths intersected that day in the car when he asked if God was real, and I had to help carry him from the back seat once we returned home, a limp noodle of a child who had just gotten his answer. I heave the big suitcase onto the bathroom scale and cross my fingers that it's not more than 50 pounds, the maximum weight for an international flight. The suitcase covers most of the scale, including the numbers, so it's hard to read the verdict. Shifting it only makes the needle dance. I finally get it to balance without my help and lean to the right and then to the left to see if I can make out the numbers. Neither direction will give me an accurate reading, so I straddle the scale until I am directly above it. 45 pounds. We made it with room to spare. Another suitcase goes on the scale. Jonathan, now a sophomore in college, is leaving for West Africa in the morning. A year's worth of clothes and supplies shoved into 2 suitcases, carefully calibrated to avoid the hefty fine for overstuffing luggage. Misread the scale and you pay $200. Across the Atlantic, Jonathan pops in online several afternoons a week to chat, as much as you can chat with an ocean between you. We type messages back and forth, and that's when I realize the honeymoon is over, his idealism washed away by 2 straight months of rain. Disappointment, culture shock, and lack of sunshine have dissolved his resolve to save the world. These are the only things he confesses at the moment, the only things I know about at the time. It's strange to think how much I fretted over the scale a few months before. There are more important things you can misread and pay a steeper price. Or maybe the instrument itself is off. I just keep moving forward, refusing to let go of a broken compass, Jonathan would say later, having been meticulously prepared to go in the wrong direction. Writing things down just after they happen decreases the margin of error when you try to recall them later on. Distance muddies accuracy as much as misreading does. What I remember about that day in the car is my son's audacity, his very first act of rebellion toward God. Or was it just toward me? It was as if his 8-year-old self, with his bowl cut and bright eyes, had conjured up the most hurtful thing he could say to his mother. How do we even know God is real? That's how I remember it now, 13 years after it happened. What Jonathan remembers is that his fear of God, a literal fear, not a poetic awe, was so strong that he worked himself into a near heart attack at his own impudence. Other times he concedes that there might have been a recognition of God's realness that made him go limp, like a rag doll, but the awareness was internal, an intellectual leap. We were both wrong, because I wrote it down just after it happened. The eyewitness accounts were in a cloth box on the top shelf of my closet. I had to dig through 3 boxes of journals to find the right one. There it was, October 2nd, 1999, Jonathan's Epiphany. That's what I had written at the top of the paper. The story rolled out over 4 pages, every detail recorded as if I were a cop making an accident report. And the report was clear. It was neither impudence nor panic attack. The journal entry noted that I had been worried about the change in Jonathan's behavior. That part I remembered correctly. He could be disrespectful. He had been showing off for his older friends. He had just turned 8, and he wasn't the same kid he had been before we moved from our tight-knit community to this new city.